Hi, my name is Chris Havrilla. I'm VP of Talent Product Strategy for Oracle Cloud HCM. If the past few years have taught us anything, it's to be agile and embrace an ever changing environment. In your HR role, that evolution has been constant. You've proven yourself to be the heart of the organization with expanded focus and extended influence, and have attuned yourself to the ever changing demands and desires of your workforce. This is not new news. You know the what's and have survived that shift. Now, what are the now what's? And how do you thrive in the constant evolution of work, workforce, and workplace? This session should be food for thought on HR's expanded focus and increased influence on corporate decision making and the trending skill sets to increase business acumen, data fluency, and tech savviness to ensure strategic voice and leadership within the organization. Keeping work, workforce, and workplace evolution in sync is critical to unlocking the performance and potential of workers, but also teams and the organization. Who's going to do that? And that really begs the question, if not HR, who would it be? CEOs, business leaders, boards, investors, all are realizing this and more confident in the function's ability to do it, including HR themselves. Pre-pandemic, there was consistent agreement across HR and business leaders that the function had to evolve, but the confidence was not there. As a researcher, we saw those numbers change dramatically with the pandemic. I did research in my prior role, and as well, we saw this realization that the secret to unlocking performance and potential of the organization is actually in unlocking the potential and performance of the workers themselves. In the last 20 plus years of tech innovation, we really didn't see the productivity gains that we thought we would get. If anything, they were stagnant or decreased. It really wasn't until the pandemic when we saw it soar. And we saw it soar through the instinct and survive phase of the pandemic, but then it began to wane again. As what? Why? And I believe it was that pull to go back to normal, but normal didn't really happen. We saw the rise of the individual and each worker with agency and choice and a new different world with different options and situations and different ways of thinking and working felt just different, and they felt empowered to make different better choices or decisions for themselves around work and their relationships with their employers. And not just workers themselves, leaders as well. If you look at the numbers, you start to see the why. 61% of executives shifted their focus post pandemic and kind of away from work optimization and redesign to work reimagination, and realizing we had to fundamentally think differently about everything, and that was opposed to 29% pre-pandemic. Tech and data will be really critical to the shift here. The interesting part, 72% of executives identified the ability of people to adapt, reskill, and assume new roles as kind of the top ranked thing that would help navigate future disruptions, to be prepared for the unexpected or the expected. And what's HR's role in this? I believe it's understanding the business outcomes and how they will use tech and data, workers, managers, even HR themselves, which will be key to the shift here. As such, your tech stack, whether it leverages the foundation of one cloud infrastructure and unified cloud applications, or whether it's connected with APIs and integrations and all the considerations that bring, and frankly, your strategy in general and how it's applied, all that tech and data for the outcomes you want, all of it's critical. And who knows or even owns all of this in any organization? The research will actually show you that not many have even a full inventory of all the systems that they have, with cloud becoming more and more prevalent, nor do they have a picture or even a strategy beyond implementation. Why is this HR's role, or what should that role be, and working with whom? No one correct answer here. And while you don't have to be a technologist, you do have to be savvy and fully partnering with your IT and your vendors. It is your business. And HR not only has the broader focus beyond just employees and HR processes and transactions, it has to look at the entire workforce and worker types, including machines that have entered our workforce, which requires a different data set and language. And I'm thinking here skills and capabilities, and we'll come back to that, but also a broader influence across all the organization's stakeholders, workers, customers, partners, and suppliers. I thought this was super interesting research also, just to kind of play on this theme of HR's changing and evolving role. This winter, CEOs navigating the ongoing complexity and uncertainty in both their external and internal environments were actually asked how do they lean on on their leadership teams, and they were asked to rank order a number of roles in order of importance to their personal success as a CEO. And two-thirds of surveyed CEOs ranked the chief financial officer as most important. No real surprise here. And 55% ranked business unit or regional leaders, business unit leaders, with the chief operations officers and chief talent and HR officers kind of neck and neck in that top three. Very, very telling, and certainly different than what we've seen in the past. So, workforce, workplace issues are business issues. Some of these topics we will touch on are the questions we ask ourselves in product strategy here at Oracle. Like, is work now a marketplace? Are organizations ready for the great retention and all this talk about employee experience, especially how do you scale it? And certainly the criticality of technology and data to keeping workforce, even workplace in sync, and this notion that people data is business data. You know, I'll first kind of look at this, notion of has work become a marketplace, and I think there's a couple of considerations here that are critical. We can't keep solving the problems of an organization with talent acquisition. We can't keep going back and looking for talent to solve for attrition or lack of skills or capabilities to do the work of the organization. Organizations and their leaders' ability to see, understand, access, and retain workers across the broad spectrum of the workforce ecosystem, all worker types and talent pools, even machines as workers, as I mentioned before, is really supremely important to this notion of we have to access talent, not just acquire talent all the time. That talent could be within our organizations, it could be outside of the organizations, but we have to realize that there are people shortages, skills shortages, talent shortages, and we have to start looking at things in a different way. The other side of that is the workers themselves. Jobs, roles, how people work and how work gets done has changed dramatically. There's less emphasis on the job itself or linear career progression, and more focus on skills and experience and how it's gained, how it's learned, how people develop these things, and how they're leveraged. And I think that's crucial here. So you have a change in organizational behavior, and needing to access talent, and certainly this notion that workers are not necessarily on a career maybe ladder, but they're moving sideways, backwards, forwards, all over the place, all in this kind of attempt to access experiences. So I think that what that means is how do we look at this as giving people agency? How do we look at this as an exchange of work with skills and capabilities when maybe jobs and roles aren't the prevalent decision making criteria for business and or talent decisions? So choosing or matching skills, capabilities, experience, and or interests for the enterprise needs of the work of the organization is getting more and more important every day. Other big topic that we're hearing so much about that really is related to all of this is employee experience. And an employee experience is not just about how do we, you know, make the workplace more enjoyable, but it's actually more around how do we unlock performance and potential of our people and thus the organization itself. And I do think it really becomes super critical to talk about the notion of outcomes. But sticking with this discussion of work as a marketplace, one way to give workers more agency and choice in what they do is through not just talent marketplaces that we probably been hearing more and more about, but opportunity marketplaces, which we have as part of our talent solutions, have kind of made more visible, and given organizations an opportunity to make opportunities more visible and to communicate to workers what they are. And that could be around development or training or career ambassadorship, project or gig participation, networking, and certainly, worker progression or promotion around jobs and roles. Um, Opportunity marketplaces are designed to provide workers with choice by helping them match their skills, interests, and capabilities against current and even future business and work demands. Such gigs or projects give workers new development experiences and opportunities to learn in the flow of work, not just by looking at content in our learning systems, further enhancing the skills they bring to the organization. Opportunity marketplaces offer huge benefits by giving us visibility, insights, and value into things that are not necessarily visible to us now, like understanding the work of the organization, skills and capabilities of our workforce, current and developing. We see side of work projects happening all the time, but we don't really have visibility into that as workers, as HR, or as leaders. So it's really much of which has been informal or even invisible up until now. It also allows the organization to more quickly identify and redeploy workers against critical business priorities. And workers who are able to choose what matters or interests them become more motivated and even engaged. There are three really core opportunity or talent marketplaces approach or points of entry that we're seeing around this notion of a marketplace. And the first one is really around internal mobility. We're probably seeing that most, which is about roles and careers and worker progression. But there's also a second approach, kind of what I would call a developmental marketplace, like I described above, which is beyond mobility and really focuses on development opportunities with skills and capabilities and more focused on worker agility. Both of these are internally focused approaches, and lastly, the third approach is really a little bit more internal and external, and it takes and create kind of takes advantage of the mobility and the development side, but it really is more of a true brokerage, for lack of a better term, that takes both of those approaches together, but connecting internal and external workers to enterprise opportunities and needs. And those external workers could be full-time or part-time or even contingent workers. Certainly connecting and communication, which we know is not a one-size-fits-all approach, is critical. We've got to help connect our workforce, but we also have to connect with our workforce. And communication is really key to that worker engagement and experience, as are people first technology management and leadership, which we'll talk a little bit more now. They're all critical to this notion of the great retention. We heard about the great resignation, reshuffling, reprioritization, but really, I think if organizations are going to keep their eye on the ball, they're going to be focused on this notion of the great retention and how do we focus on keeping the talent that we have, and understanding that we are constantly in competition for our own workers. And this is really important for engagement also. People are leaving in droves for a variety of reasons, but the top three are still managers, and their relationship with their managers. experience and the experience I have with an organization, but also opportunity and challenge. And nothing is more important to each and every one of us, right, than ourselves. And I think that is kind of the focus here, is that companies with engaged employees have greater customer satisfaction, higher customer loyalty, better productivity, and stronger retention. Engaged employees outperform companies with disengaged employees by 202%. Really interesting research out of the Gallup organization. But a critical driver for positive employee engagement still lies with that employee manager relationship. In fact, Gallup states that the managers are responsible for at least 70% of the variance in their employee relationships. Oop, I just messed up my slides here. But I do think that it is, goodness, there we go. I do think that it's critical to look at this notion of the people first leadership. It's important because individuals perform their best work when they're focused and productive and engaged. In the context of supporting high performance, organizations really have grappled and continue to grapple with this question of how can we actually embed performance and development activities in day-to-day work in a way that doesn't really take away from, but instead adds to a focus of productivity, engagement. And the answer is really rooted in technology, but it's also rooted in that manager and employee relationship. And how does a manager support these outcomes, support performance on a weekly basis, not an annual basis or a biannual basis? And in managing performance, it works best when it's not a separate process done with separate tools. It really should be every day. So for next steps, organizations can prepare to evolve performance management with a focus on growth and progress by empowering individuals and teams to do their very best work, by maybe changing this notion of command and control, and I tell you how to do work. Instead, I tell you what to do and why to do it, and really connect you with that work, and those outcomes, and leave it to the worker to understand how. They're the ones closest to the work. And this is a different model. It's a commitment and collaboration model that is all about high accountability, but also high empathy. And I think it's important in this notion of cultivating human-centric, leadership capabilities too, is looking at this future of management and taking advantage of technology as enabler of, not only the check-ins, but the performance in the flow of work. The notion of worker-centric technology, I think, is super important. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. And frankly, you can see this reflected in Oracle's product investment strategy and approach. The strength of that core and foundation is huge, so that the applications that we develop to leverage it all, and I'm talking about things like dynamic skills and opportunity marketplace, all sit at the intersection of your core HR and talent systems. And certainly our most recent launch of Oracle Me, our employee experience platform, does this as well. And its whole notion is to help know me, see me, help me, communicate with me as me being that worker. And we do that through targeted communication and personalized guidance, continuous engagement and action. Certainly the notion of HR service delivery around those moments that matter, and complete or extended experiences across the company. Technology can help add value and insights to all. It can also help change behaviors and rituals, the things that maybe have prevented us from getting the kind of promise and outcomes that we thought technology and data would give us. but I do believe that if we're designing technology right, if we're applying it right, it really can improve people's uniquely human ability to create knowledge, to apply that knowledge, and to make work easier for people and better for people, and certainly for them to be better at work as well. Because technology is where we collect and leverage data, and let's be clear, as we discussed earlier, people data is business data. Those business issues we talked about don't get addressed without people. We need real time, forward looking insights, not backward looking. We need real time, forward looking, not stale data, not things that maybe happened in the past, or even what's happening just currently. We need forward-looking insights to help organizations understand how to achieve beyond current work outcomes, but most importantly, the future ones by harnessing workforce potential and transforming work, like we saw in that earlier research. Gaining real-time insights about workforce sentiment, productivity, their well-being, and their priorities, as well as things like DEIB metrics, questions that we need to ask ourselves, to look for insights so that we can make better decisions and take action. COVID-19 was really kind of a wake-up call, around using metrics and measurements, about past or current state. And it's really how that severely limits an organization's ability to survive, much less absorb and leverage change in a way that keeps us moving forward, let alone to thrive in it. We don't live in a world of certainties anymore, more like probabilities. So asking and trying to answer better, different, and evolving questions, questions that really push all to shift our paradigms and challenge status quo about work, workplace, even the workforce, can help everyone absorb constant change with kind of the confidence that comes from thinking and looking, ahead, thinking and preparing for what could be. Signals and scenario planning, the art of what if, not predicting, but thinking about what is possible is a great approach, to preparedness or even lack of preparedness, and how we kind of embrace this notion of agility. These challenges have exacerbated the employee workforce information gap, and the research really does show that, from even just a year ago, 97% of respondents to the 2020 Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends Survey stated that they needed additional information on some aspect of their workforce. Only 11% of these organizations, though, said they were able to produce information on their workforce in real time. That's a statistic that's staggering, even before organizations were forced to make a series of immediate pandemic driven decisions about their workforce. Organizations really do need to ask different questions and measure and report the information and the answers in real time in order to shed light on important workforce issues, have discussions about them, and move to action. These forward looking insights, not backward looking ones, help achieve these new outcomes. And really, HR's evolving role is how to help them, how to help even workers themselves kind of harness workforce potential and transform work. If it's not HR to own it, who will? But owning it doesn't mean you're responsible for it. It means helping to facilitate the kind of answers that people are looking for when we're dealing with problems that maybe we've never ever dealt with before. So understanding outcomes and thinking in questions and seeking those real-time insights, about workers and their potential and their performance and productivity and well-being and skills and capabilities and priorities are all critical. Certainly, this notion of even the broader workforce ecosystem, DEIB, ESG, attrition, retention. Not that it's bad to understand attrition data, or maybe even current state data like pay equity, but without forward-looking things like maybe pay to stay data, that is really kind of shining a light on old comp practices and policies like capping pay changes for mobility or promotions, saying things like we can't afford pay equity or paying people to stay when we really can't afford not to, when we have to replace those people that leave and all the valuable tribal information that leaves with them. And it's HR's prerogative to help shine that light and say we're paying that money anyway to bring new talent in that doesn't have that tribal knowledge. This is not a one size fits all list of questions. There are lots of opportunities to be curious when thinking about the needs of your specific organization, your specific leaders and teams and workers. But there are questions that you could be asking around how you capitalize on worker potential, and maybe that is about job evolution, or how often are jobs changing? Is your job architecture dynamic and not static? Which ones are changing and to what degree, and how ready is your workforce to perform the work of now and in the future? What is our ability to change, and how agile are we? How prepared are we for the expected or the unexpected? And how ready are our leaders and managers to accept new ways of working or remote hybrid work models? How many have the kind of attributes or really just behaviors and rituals to kind of let the worker choose how work is done, and spending more time holding them accountable to the what's and the whys. It could be questions around the entire talent ecosystem and not just employees, full-time employees. What is that workforce footprint or opportunity? How many workers are providing direct or indirect services? What is our the health of our organization and our internal talent market? How competitive are we for our own employees? And certainly all the questions around retention, or certainly anything that might help us translate what our culture and values are into the appropriate actions. What are some of the key takeaways that I think are important in this kind of evolving role and the things that we've talked about today? And I certainly think that is HR is leading the way for the business, and that business of people. And it's not about that ownership of experience or potential or performance or being the expert with all the answers. It really is about how do we become experts in finding those solutions and direction. Design thinking and agile are critical skills, I think, for strategic HR and this evolving role, because these approaches are about complex business problems solving, and how we absorb change at speed and scale and with insights. The ability to leverage tech and data and insights to tell stories, to help get outcomes, to help shine the light on the things that the organization needs to know to make better decisions and actions. And certainly experience and skills and this notion of talent access and retention. These are the outcomes that are the business of HR. The world of work is becoming a marketplace, and skills and opportunities are key for visibility, agency, and results. So, with that, I say thank you for your time and attention. Our product strategy team is here for you as your customer advocate and advisor as you think about these big issues and to help build um, these evolving showcases that are your organizations. So I hope this is just the start of a dialogue, and my contact information is here to connect. Thank you so much.